The Batman of the 80s ripened into the Batman of the 90s, violent, repulsive, dark, disgusting, vulgar, profane, boring, all the reasons why it marked the end of an era, and why it was one of the most important superhero films ever made. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Batman Returns. Thank you to 80stees.com for sponsoring this video. Click the link in the description below and use code TOYGALAXY to get 30% off your order today. Decorate your torso with your favorite comic book heroes from the 80s, or your favorite TV shows from the 90s, or your favorite movies from the 2000s. Actually, it's possible that those are all the same characters. If not, you've got plenty of choices at 80stees.com, built by a fan who loves all of this pop culture stuff, who had no choice but to make his own store to sell the kind of shirts he spent his whole life wishing he could buy. 80stees.com has something for everyone, from He-Man to Batman, from Baywatch to Xena, Shaun of the Dead, Lord of the Rings, Dial of Destiny, and Cocaine Bear. Don't get hung up on the name. 80stees.com started with the 80s, but they've got shirts for movies going back to the 1940s, TV shows from the 50s, holiday specials, wrestling, cereal, department store, soda, and candy brands. Give a shirt as a gift, buy an extra to keep for yourself. This is a way to give voice to the person you are on the inside, on the outside. You don't need to know the words to explain your love for retro gaming. Let your shirt tell the story for you. Click the link below and use code TOYGALAXY for 30% off your order today. Again, that's code TOYGALAXY for 30% off your order. And thanks again to 80stees.com. Batman Returns is a feature film released in 1992 based on the DC Comics superhero. Directed by Tim Burton, starring Michael Keaton, it is a direct sequel to 1989's Batman, the movie that single-handedly changed the public perception of the character, the genre, the source material, and made over $1 billion in the process. Gotham City is home to a number of strange and extraordinary characters. Oswald Cobblepot, deformed at birth, abandoned by his parents, the Penguin Man of Gotham, grew up in the sewers raised by traveling circus performers and actual penguins. He's had a long time to harbor a grudge and plans to take it out on Gotham City. Max Shreck is a powerful business magnate looking to build a new power plant that actually drains power off the grid. He'll replace everyone at City Hall if that's what it takes to guarantee all the power flows back to him. Selina Kyle, once a secretary for Max Shreck, somehow survived his attempt to kill her after she learned about his diabolical power play. Reborn as Catwoman, she has newfound motivation and empowerment to carry out her revenge. Bruce Wayne is settled into his dual life as billionaire playboy and masked vigilante Batman. His routine is rocked by the emergence of Penguin, Shreck, and Catwoman, each mirroring a part of himself back to himself with tragic revelations. Can he stop the Penguin from killing the firstborn children of Gotham while sympathizing with the trauma of losing his parents? Can he prevent Shreck from making Penguin mayor and building his anti-power plant, knowing that Wayne Enterprises continues to pull similar levers at City Hall? Can Bruce reconcile his feelings for Selina Kyle while battling Catwoman as Batman? And why is this happening now, during Christmas, the busiest time of the year? Questions that can only be answered as Batman Returns. In 1989, Batman, directed by Tim Burton, starring Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton, made nearly $500 million at the box office and almost $1 billion more in licensed merchandise. It marked the beginning of a new chapter for Batman, for DC Comics, their parent company Warner Brothers, and comic books as a movie genre. Previously known for his role in cartoons like Super Friends and the 1960s Batman television series Batman the Movie introduced a darker, grittier character than audiences were used to, and they loved it, and they wanted more. To be fair, not all the reviews were positive, but the ticket and merchandise sales spoke for themselves. Preparations for a sequel were already underway before 1989 even ended. Warner Brothers hoped to retain the creative team and start shooting in 1990. That said, the creative team wasn't as excited about returning. Tim Burton was working on Edward Scissorhands, Jack Nicholson's Joker was dead, Keaton wasn't going to do it without a significant raise, and besides, there wasn't a script yet.
The Batman. Or is it just Batman?
What the fuck are you talking about?
Sam Hamm, who wrote the story for Batman, submitted multiple versions of a script that picked up where the first film left off. Gotham during the Christmas season, Bruce Wayne and Vicky Vale deepening their relationship, Billy D. Williams returning as Harvey Dent, transformed into Two-Face, and even the first appearances of Catwoman and Robin. Despite those intriguing story developments, after multiple drafts from Hamm, Burton wouldn't commit. To him, Batman was just a step along a path that also included Pee Wee Herman and Beetlejuice. As an artist, he was more interested in exploring new characters and new ideas on his own terms. Meanwhile, if Warner Brothers couldn't have Nicholson back as the Joker, they wanted what to them was the next best, next most popular villain, the Penguin.
Penguins, 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 parent penguin, bats.
Whether Two-Face made sense as a continuation from the first film was irrelevant. And not for nothing, the audience wouldn't know who Two-Face was. He didn't even make an appearance on the 1960s TV series. An episode was written but never produced because Two-Face was a little too gruesome for a kid's show like Batman. Imagine making a Batman movie that was too gruesome for kids. Spoiler alert, in 1991, Burton did agree to direct what was still being referred to as Batman 2 after he finished with Edward Scissorhands on one condition: full creative control. He wasn't going to make another Batman movie, he was going to make another Tim Burton Batman movie. Warner Brothers agreed because, yeah, Tim, that's what they wanted, same people that made the first one. But Burton had other ideas and pushed to replace writer Sam Hamm with someone who did not care about the comics. Burton was a fan of Daniel Waters' script for 1988's Heathers and knew he wouldn't be weighed down by the audience's expectations for what the characters should or should not be. Waters wasn't going to worry about how the characters were handled in the comics or even the first movie. The only thing that mattered was this movie, essentially writing it as a standalone story. That said, some of Hamm's concepts survived to the finished script, albeit significantly altered. While the story was still set at Christmas time, Catwoman was less about sex appeal and murder and more about a journey of self-empowerment through the 1990s patriarchy.
Selena Kyle, you're fired.
Bruce Wayne is Batman. Wow.
At some point, Penguin became less bird-themed and more bird-blooded, a human with actual bird-like features and physiology with story homages to his run for mayor in the 60s TV series. Max Schreck, the immoral business tycoon, was Waters' replacement for Billy Dee's Two-Face to complete the trilogy of Bruce Wayne analogs. His name inspired by the actor who played the titular vampire, or Batman, in 1922's Nosferatu. Robin was removed after Burton and Waters agreed that he didn't really serve a purpose. Everything he could do, Batman could already do, and there were already too many central characters to focus on. To be very clear, in an interview with Film Review in 1995, Waters referred to Robin as, quote, the most worthless character in the world, end quote. Robin would have to wait his turn. A third writer, Wesley Strick, was brought in to make a final pass at the script after Waters and Burton reached a creative impasse. Strick peeled away a few layers of Waters' contempt for the characters and, as directed by Warner Brothers, gave Penguin some autonomy of his own, specifically an evil mission which became kidnapping the firstborn sons of Gotham and the threat of missile-firing penguins.
Penguins, 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 parent penguin.
Technically, Waters is credited with screenplay while Waters and Hamm are credited with story. Strick, despite being a regular presence on set doing rewrites, went uncredited. Cast was officially announced in September of 1991, as well as the title Batman Returns. Other returns included Michael Gough as Alfred, Pat Hingle as Commissioner Gordon, and Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne after a substantial raise from $5 million to $10 million. Danny Devito was cast as the Penguin, which dispelled rumors of Dustin Hoffman or Robert De Niro potentially donning the top hat and monocle, and temporarily put Hoffa, a movie DeVito was producing and directing starring Jack Nicholson, on hold. Annette Bening was originally cast as Catwoman but left the production after getting pregnant. As a result, Sean Young, who was originally cast as Vicky Vale in Batman but lost the part after breaking her arm in a horse riding accident preparing for the role of Vicky Vale in a scene that wasn't even in the final film, attempted a spontaneous audition for Catwoman.
Well, I had cat-like makeup on, you know what I mean.
A limo met her in Los Angeles and took her to the Warner Brothers lot. Sean and her brother made their way to Burton's office.
Is Tim here?
Yeah, can I help you?
I heard he hid under the desk, and he wouldn't see me. They said that I would get the chance to meet Burton and connect with him.
Despite her pleading her case on late-night talk shows, producers insisted that she just wasn't what they were looking for. What they were looking for was Michelle Pfeiffer, who was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for her performance in 1989's Dangerous Liaisons and Best Actress for 1990's The Fabulous Baker Boys.
Where's Robin? Marlon Wayans.
Marlon Wayans was cast as Robin, or rather, a character called the Kid that at one point may or may not have been Robin. With so many heroes and villains to focus on, the character wasn't in the final script. According to Wayans, he still gets residual checks for Batman Returns and Batman Forever, which he also did not play Robin in. Batman Returns was shot between September 1991 and February of 1992 in the US. Warner Brothers booked massive sound stages in Burbank, California, and built entire blocks of Gotham City. Penguin's Lair was staged at Universal Studios. Anton Furst, the production designer who created the iconic Gothic architecture and imagery of 1989's Batman, was contractually unavailable due to an exclusivity agreement he signed with Columbia Pictures in 1990. Bo Welch got the job based on his past work with Burton on Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands. Coincidentally, Welch would have been the production designer on the first Batman if the production had been in the US. Union laws prevented Welch from working in London at the time. Welch admitted in a 1992 article in the Miami Herald that he was overwhelmed by the scale of Batman Returns, but was excited to bring a fresh vision to the franchise. He imagined a Gotham that felt bigger, more American in design, more fun, and, quote, a little weirder. He didn't even bother looking at the first film because maintaining consistency wasn't a factor. Instead, he took his design cues from Burton's own sketches for Catwoman's costume, which he felt reinforced themes of corruption and moral decay on the verge of unraveling.
Batman Returns, the greatest new cereal Gotham City has ever known. Now it's marshmallow and chocolate flavored. With the amazing new Batmobile and incredible new villains. Catwoman. The Penguin. It's deliciously crunchy chocolate flavored cereal and great marshmallow shapes. The action-packed cereal that's part of this complete breakfast. Batman Returns. There's never been a cereal like it.
The Batsuit got a makeover, including a more traditional bat symbol and hints of machinery emphasizing its function as armor. Its rigid structure contrasted by the sleek, sexy, shiny latex of Catwoman's bodysuit, designed by Tim Burton as a visual expression of Selina Kyle's transformation and fractured psyche. Penguin's makeup was designed by the legendary Stan Winston studio. Winston himself handled the final design of DeVito's facial application, calling back to characters he worked on in 1978's The Wiz. The best Batmobile was back for a second film, now with the shape-shifting ability to jettison 40% of its chassis to squeeze through tight spaces as the Bat Missile. Among other toys utilized by Batman were a programmable multi-target Batarang and the Bat Boat. Batman Returns hit theaters in May of 1992, riding a wave of licensed merchandising that had been in the works since the previous film left theaters. Every other studio cleared the deck of releases for fear of getting lost in the second wave of Batmania. Everyone was pushing Bat products. Kmart, Target, Ralston, Purina brought back Batman cereal. There was licensed clothing, bed sheets, costumes, school supplies, party supplies, school party supplies. McDonald's reskinned thousands of restaurants into Gotham City locations, choice hotels, Diet Coke, Ertl toys, Applause collectibles, posters, model kits, TVs, dinner trays, lunchboxes, chalk, and more.
It's chilly in here.
I think the eye makeup is in my eye.
We need to talk.
Alfred!
All that anticipation, all that promotion resulted in a record-setting opening weekend. It made over $40 million, taking the #1 spot from the previous record holder, 1989's Batman. In week 2, it was still the #1 movie with an additional $38 million and set another record as the second fastest film to reach $100 million, second only to 1989's Batman. Warner Brothers was very concerned about the 45% drop-off from week 1 to week 2 compared to just 23% for 1989's Batman. Week 3 saw another 45% drop-off, bringing in only $20 million as A League of Their Own and Boomerang knocked it down to #3. In week 4, it was ranked 4th as Universal Soldier joined the party. By week 7, it was out of the top 10. Compared to the previous Batman film's 13 weeks in the top 10, it was cause for concern. By the end of Return's original run, it brought in $162 million in the US, $100 million less than 1989's Batman, with a budget that was more than double. Batman returns to home video on VHS and Laserdisc in October of 1992. It has since been released on DVD and Blu-ray and is currently available to stream with your subscription to HBO Max, or to rent and buy digitally from just about everywhere else.
Gotta fly!
Where does he get all those wonderful toys? From Kenner.
Kenner continued their line of Batman action figures with Returns branding, along with figures of Bruce Wayne and Batman in a variety of non-movie related colors and styles were Catwoman, a repainted Penguin figure from their 1984 Superpowers line, and a 2-pack of penguins with missiles strapped to their backs. Noticeably absent was any representation of Max Schreck, his son Chip, Commissioner Gordon, Alfred, Selina Kyle, or any of the other characters in the film. Noticeably present was Robin. Long rumored to be in the film but never actually included in the script, the Robin figure is modeled after Tim Drake, the then current Robin in the comics. He was introduced in 1989 around the same time the first film was released, and not coincidentally named after Tim Burton. Some have suggested that the figure was supposed to be a Marlon Wayans figure, but Kenner changed the color of the skin after he was cut from the film. That theory is highly unlikely considering the figure was intended for the last wave of the Dark Knight collection, held over to be included in the Batman Returns assortment. Sometimes a flat top is just a poorly sculpted pompadour. Six Flags amusement parks became host to Batman the Ride along with the Batman Stunt Show. Video games were released for Sega Game Gear, the Master System, Genesis, Sega CD. There were computer games, a version for the Atari Lynx, and the Super NES. In a vacuum, the performance of Batman Returns would have been considered a resounding success, but as an encore to Batman, it was indicative of a need for change in direction. Warner Brothers found out that if you give Tim Burton creative freedom to make a Tim Burton Batman movie, you get a Tim Burton Batman movie, and that's not what they wanted. Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Beetlejuice, and Batman established Burton's aesthetic. Edward Scissorhands further emphasized the kinds of strange and unusual characters that appealed to Burton. His dark humor, his social commentary, his affinity for the art of film, even at the expense of the audience experience. Batman Returns was rated PG-13 for violence, sexual situations, some adult language, but parents didn't expect it to actually be PG-13. It's Batman, it's a kid's movie, how bad could it be? At the very least, they expected a redo of the first movie. Dark and moody, sure. Heavily stylized, absolutely. Weird, supernatural, even violent, all of that was welcomed. But some parents weren't prepared to explain Penguin's flipper trick to their kids, or the degree of violence, the sexual situations, and adult language, and they let Warner Brothers know through a mountain of letters. What parents couldn't forgive at the time was that there was no reward for getting through the blood and fish guts, the repulsive filth of the Penguin, the awkward sexual dialogue. It was a slog for kids waiting for Batman to even appear on screen, which he doesn't do for nearly the first quarter of the movie. After Batman Returns, Warner Brothers and Burton were happy to move on to another vision. A new writer, a new director, even a new Batman. Joel Schumacher was brought in to get the franchise back on track, an incredible thing to say after just 2 movies. A 1993 article on EW.com reported that Warner didn't want a repeat of the, quote, macabre 1992 sequel, which frightened small children and angered many parents. Warner Brothers really didn't want Tim to direct the 3rd movie because he was, quote, too dark and odd for them. Burton was still an executive producer on the 3rd Batman chapter, but the rest of the creative team was rebooted. Warner Brothers went in the exact opposite direction, opting for Joel Schumacher, who could breathe new life, new excitement, new action, and new color into the franchise, and maybe keep in mind that there are kids in the audience. Keaton declined to return and was replaced with Val Kilmer. Rumors immediately began to swirl about the possibility of Robin Williams appearing as the Riddler until Jim Carrey signed on. Two-Face and Robin finally joined the franchise, played by Tommy Lee Jones and Chris O'Donnell, respectively. While Batman Forever was considered a success, it was a minor correction before 1997's Batman and Robin, the first Batman movie of the series produced without Tim Burton's involvement. George Clooney as Batman, new writers, and the indignity of ending the franchise for nearly a decade after being panned by audience and critics. The Burton Bat franchise almost continued in a Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman movie in the mid-90s. To be written by Daniel Waters, it would have started fresh with Selina relocated to a different city with a completely new cast of characters. We live here in the future and know that not only did a Pfeiffer Catwoman movie never materialize, but the 2004 Halle Berry movie did. It was not part of the Burton Batverse and did not result in a sequel. It exists in its own section of the DC multiverse that doesn't get a lot of visitors. The spirit of the Burton Batverse returned in August of 2021 with a DC comic series called Batman 89. Written by Sam Hamm with art by Joe Quinones, it picks up a few years after the events of Batman Returns and imagines a timeline where Batman Forever and Batman and Robin never happened. Instead, continuing with themes and concepts introduced in the first 2 Burton Bat films, Keaton's Batman and Pfeiffer's Catwoman are back, Billy D. Williams' Two-Face and the Marlon Wayans-inspired Robin are featured along with Commissioner Gordon's daughter Barbara, who may one day take on the mantle of Batgirl. 6 issues were published through July of 2022. A sequel series called Batman 89 Echoes started last month, November of 2023, picking up a few years later featuring a Barbara Gordon that looks an awful lot like Winona Ryder, a Harley Quinn that looks an awful lot like Madonna, and a Scarecrow that looks an awful lot like Jeff Goldblum. Keaton's long-awaited return to the role of Batman was supposed to happen in 2022's Batgirl, but as of this video, that movie has been Zaslaved. Instead, this year, 2023, The Flash played fast and loose with the timeline, allowing Keaton's version of the character to inhabit the same world as Michael Shannon's General Zod, Ben Affleck's Batman, and Ezra Miller's Flash from the DC Cinematic Universe, which has been gunned. It's no coincidence that Burton's Batman returned 30 years after his last appearance. Yes, it's a naked ploy by filmmakers to cash in on nostalgia for the generation that grew up on the Burton Bat films. But more than that, it's a recognition of what those films represent to movies, and more specifically, to comic book movies. Batman Returns was immediately followed by the premiere of Batman the Animated Series, which maintained the dark aesthetic and PG-13 storytelling. Batman the Animated Series inspired other television media intended for kids to do more with the characters, to tell more grounded, more complex stories. An entire generation of kids grew up with superheroes as a vehicle for serious, mature storytelling. Over the last 3 decades, comic book movies and television series have experimented with comedy, drama, action, camp, horror, and everything in between. For most of it, Batman Returns was perceived as the shocking end to a franchise with so much potential. You can draw a straight line from Batman through Batman Returns to the emergence of comic book movies as the dominant film genre of the last 20 years. If Batman Returns was guilty of anything in 1992, it was that it arrived too early and played for audiences that weren't ready to think about the future. Thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. If you're in the position to help the channel grow, if you would like early access to the videos, ad-free, as well as behind-the-scenes features, sneak peeks at upcoming projects, and exclusive monthly podcast about the show, please, it was sexy. Please visit our Patreon, patreon.com/toygalaxy, and let us know in the comments down below where you rank Batman Returns in your list of favorite comic book movies. I definitely like it more today than I did back then. I remember seeing it in the theater when it was originally released a few weeks after it opened in a theater with less than 10 people in attendance. I wasn't disappointed with it per se, but it certainly wasn't what I was expecting at the time, and knowing what I know now, that's the best review I could give it. 30 years later, I finally get it. Cut.